Hello, and welcome to another video. Today I thought it'd be fun just to do a search online and see what comes up as some of the most common questions people ask about finance. So I thought we'd tackle maybe 5 of them today. If you like this, we can always do more of them. But I think why not? We've got the internet, let's use it, right? So if that sounds interesting to you and hearing maybe a question that you have had in the back of your mind that you have never asked because you're afraid to ask, that might be addressed today, so you might want to stick around. Okay, anyhow, so if you are new here, welcome. We're happy to have you. I'm Lisa, I'm a financial advisor. I've been around for 14 years and I help people get to financial freedom as quickly as possible. It sounds weird, been around for I've been working in the industry for 14 years. I've been helping people this for 14 years. I've been around a lot longer than that, unfortunately. I know I look great for my age, but you know. And if you are a regular here, we're happy to have you back. Thank you for coming back, and let's get into it. So one of the first ones that caught my eye is, what is my net worth? So I think the question, these are very vague questions that the AI technology and the online search kind of came up with. So I'm going to address this as what makes up my net worth, because people talk about net worth all the time. The net worth of Elon Musk, the net worth of Donald Trump, whoever you're talking about, right? And I think a lot of people don't really know what goes into the net worth. We just it's one of those phrases that I used to do this as well when I wasn't in the industry, 15 plus years ago, which was I'd nod and go, oh yeah, net worth. And I had no idea what that meant. It's okay. There's no reason that you should know that. They don't teach you this in school. So why would you know this? So it's okay to ask this. So net worth is basically you take your assets and you subtract your liabilities. So let's just take a general everyday example, okay? So let's say you're a working family, you guys own a home, you have some 401ks, you have some investments, you have a bank account, okay? So let's say your home is worth $500,000 if you sold it today. I'm going to do really round numbers because I'm trying to do math in my head, and I am not good at doing math in my head. It's okay, but I'm not good at doing math in my head, so we're going to make them really easy numbers so I remember what I'm saying. So let's say your house is worth $500,000 if you sold it today. That is the full value of the house. We're not just talking about the equity. We will get into that in a second. But so $500,000 house, our 2 401ks are $50,000 each. So that's $100,000. So now we're at $600,000 in assets. Then we've got a bank account that's got $50,000 in it. So now we're at $650,000. And what else did I say? Let's just take the 401k. So let's just take those four. So we're at $650,000. That is our assets. Okay. Yes, you can add in your cars and all that stuff, but most people don't do that. We usually just take the big assets, like things like what I talked about, bank accounts, investment accounts, and real estate. You could add in business. If you own a business, you could add in that, but let's just keep it simple, okay? Then you take away the liabilities. So liabilities are the mortgage you owe on that house. So maybe you owe $300,000, right? You have $300,000 or you have $200,000 of equity because we said $500,000 for the house. So $300,000 is what you still owe on it. And maybe you have a student loan, and that's, I don't know, $50,000. Okay, hopefully it's not that much, but let's say you do have that, or you have some credit card debt, or you can put some other debt in there, car loan, things like that. That would all go into the debt portion. Okay, so we have $650,000 worth of assets, and we have $350,000 worth of debt or liabilities, and we take them and subtract them. 650 minus 350 is 300. 300,000 is your net worth. That is how you come up with the net worth. Like I said, you can make it super complicated or you can keep it really simple, but that's how you come up with your net worth. So when people say, well, what is my net worth? Just do that practice. It shouldn't take you that long. And if you miss a couple of things here that you're just trying to get a general number, because obviously it changes, right? Your $50,000 401k today could be $60,000 in 2 weeks. It could be $45,000 depending on how the market works. So you just want to get a general idea. And the reason people look at net worths are to get a basic idea of how they stand, but at the same time, if your net worth is negative, that should be concerning for you. That means we need to build more up on the asset side. If your liabilities are low, that doesn't necessarily have to be concerning. Like personally, we don't have a lot of liabilities, but it's good to know what they are and keep track of them, right? So knowing your net worth on an ongoing basis is good. How often do you need to calculate this out? Once a year, every 6 months. There's not like a number. It's not like your social security number that you need to know off the top of your head. Nobody's going to come to you and say, what is your net worth today? That's just not going to happen. Okay. So another question that's in here is, how can I save more money? Okay, so we talk about this a lot. So I would suggest going through and looking at some of the videos on this that I've already done about this. But I think when people say, how can I save more money? I think we need to have a very detailed amount that we're trying to save. It makes it easier. So if my goal is to save $10,000, now how do I work my way back into saving that $10,000? Is it, $750 a month? Is it, I'm going to do a combination of saving from my paycheck and making more money from income? Maybe I have a side hustle. Maybe I'm doing something else. You can figure out what combination that is. But how can I save more money is too, and this is a question a lot of people ask. It's too vague. You've got to make it detailed. If your goal, because when I read something like, how do I save more money? Your goal is to save more money. So what does more mean? What are you saving now? Is it zero? Is it $1,000? Is it $10,000? And, what does that mean? And if you haven't done, let's say you're saving $30,000 a year through your 401ks and through other things, is that enough? Is that not enough? Are you saving too much? I mean, that does happen. Sometimes people save too much money. Not often, but sometimes that happens. So you need to kind of quantify what that means. And so how can I save more money is really just the starting question. It's got to have lots of other questions around it. So I would say if you're not saving anything and you want to save more than that, then choose a number. Choose $5,000 this year or $10,000, and then back into how you're going to do that. And if, $750 a month just seems like way too much to be able to start with $50. Start with $100, because you might not hit your $10,000 mark by the end of the year, but you will have definitely saved more than what you're saving now, which is nothing. So you've got to put all that in perspective and give yourself a pat on the back when you do that, when you do actually accomplish that. Okay, what is my monthly budget? Okay, budgets are a weird thing because we all think we're supposed to have a budget. We do a budget, or we use, one of those apps or something, and we think we know what we have, and then it's completely wrong. So I always preach that you need to have an idea of how much you're bringing in versus how much is going out. If it really bothers you and you need to know what's going in each category, that's when you need a budget. You think I am spending way too much on eating out. That's when you need a budget to figure out how much you're actually spending, right? But if you say, look, at my general reason for doing this is I want to save more money, or I want to make sure I understand how much I need in order to survive each month, then that's different. You don't necessarily need a budget for that. So what is my monthly budget? You really just want to say, how much am I bringing in? Let's say I'm bringing in $6,000 a month after tax into the household, and I need, $5,500 to survive. So I have $500 left at the end of the day. Then you can say, does $5,500 seems kind of high? Maybe I want to go through expenses and see where I can trim. That's probably a better way to knowing your monthly budget than anything. And you want to average it, right? Because some months you have you have auto insurance payments. In other months, you have property tax you have to pay. In other months, you have a bill that came in that you weren't sure, you didn't know was going to come in. Things like that happen. So you do want to average it out. So just taking a look every month of like how much is coming in and how much is going out, really that's all you need in terms of a budget if your goal is to save more or just get an idea of how your spending is going. If you have a very specific area that you want to trim back on, that's when a budget really makes a difference. So hopefully that helps. Is my emergency fund sufficient? This question I get all the time. So this kind of links to your monthly budget thing. You do need to know how much you typically need per month to survive. Do you include Netflix and all that stuff in there? You can, or you don't have to. That's kind of a personal preference, right? But let's say I, knew that I needed $5,000 a month to survive, to pay my mortgage, pay my auto loan, pay everything that I actually need to deal with, groceries, all of that stuff. I need $5,000 a month. Well, then the typical science of that is typically 3 to 6 months should be in your emergency fund. Okay, so that would be 15,000 or 30,000, depending on your risk level. Now, how do you know your risk level? You have to do an internal conversation with yourself and say, I feel more comfortable if I had 30 and then I do 15. Okay, fine. Now, when do you have too much an emergency? Typically, if you have 12 months or more, that's probably too much to be sitting in an emergency fund and not keeping up with inflation. Because typically emergency funds are sitting in bank accounts that are not getting a huge interest rate right now. So if yours is sitting at a high yield savings account and it's keeping up with interest, then you have to assess, okay, I'm over the 12 months. Does it make sense to push some into the markets, or does that not fit with my risk profile? Does that not fit with my liquidity? So I say typically about 12 months is probably too much to have an emergency fund, but that's dependent on your situation. Do you own a business? Do you have things that complicate life sometimes, very often, that you need to save a little extra for? Do you have a relative that you're taking care of? Do you have, kids can make it so that your expenses change dramatically. So you might want to have more than 6 months in the bank. You've just got a lot of different things coming up. So there's no set rule. I would say the minimum is probably 3 months. I don't think I've ever, I'm trying to think back, I don't think I've ever told anybody less than 3 months is ideal for them. But 3 months to 12 months, I would say, is kind of that mark in there to do that. Now, a lot of people say, well, should I be working on emergency fund, saving up my emergency fund, and just not save anywhere else? Not necessarily. You might want to continue to save in your 401k or other investments outside of that, because sometimes we get into this loop with the emergency fund that something happens and then we got to refill it and then we stop doing anything else, and so you never end up taking that other step. So sometimes it does make sense to balance out saving to an emergency fund and saving for retirement or for future savings in some kind of investment vehicle. It sometimes makes sense to do that. Sometimes it doesn't. And then I would say probably the last one would be, oh, do I need insurance? This comes up a lot, especially at the beginning of the year. Do I need, now I'm not going to talk about, house, auto, I don't specialize in those areas. And by law, for most of the part, you do have to have some of those things. So that's not really a question. The questions usually are life insurance, disability insurance, and long-term care. Those are the questions that are the personal insurances that people aren't sure if they should have or they shouldn't have. Now, I could do a whole video, and I'm happy to, so feel free to reach out via email or something and let me know what your thoughts are. If you'd like to see that video, I'm happy to do that. But typically, when it comes to the 3 different types of insurances, they have 3 different goals, or they have 3 different reasons for having them. So you got to take each one. Life insurance. Is there somebody that you need to cover if something happens to you? Are you taking care of a parent? Are you married? Do you have kids? Those kind of things. If the answer is yes, then typically you should have life insurance. If the answer is no, then you've got to think, is there somebody I want to provide for if something happens? That might be yes or no, okay? So life insurance can be something that you need or not need. Now, people will say, well, what if I have enough assets to cover what I need them to have covered? Well, then you probably don't need life insurance, but have you done that work to prove to yourself that are you just kind of like assuming that, or do you actually know? I would say if you don't actually know, then you probably need life insurance. Okay. Second is, and I'm not getting into that because there's definitely life insurances you can use for retirement and all this stuff. They get complicated. I'm not going to get into that. Disability. A lot of people do have disability through work. A lot of people do not understand the disability that's through work. Actually, I would say a lot of people don't understand the life insurance that's through work either. A lot of the life insurance through work is accidental death and dismemberment. That's not your typical life insurance. It's got to be, you've got to pass away from certain things. So is that pure life insurance? It's not. With disability, what people don't realize is it's typically 60% of your income. Why is that? Well, typically it's an after-tax benefit. So they figure you're paying 40% in taxes, and so your after-tax benefit of 60% is going to be the same as your take-home. Is that true? Not always. Okay? Also, you've got to understand, does that last for the rest of your life? Does that last for 5 years? Does that last for a year? If I can go and be a greeter at Walmart, but I'm an attorney right now, does it still cover? Because if I can get a job doing something, even if it's not the same kind of job that I had before, that could be what's covered. There are plenty that are any occupation. If I can do anything, they will not cover me. Or there's own occupation. So you do need to look at that. So there's lots of different things you need to look at. Disability is very complicated in many respects. Long-term care is, do I think that I will need some kind of help that Medicare will not cover? Medicare typically covers in the hospital kind of stuff. Do I want to stay at my home? Do I want to have a nurse come in and help me, get dressed, get all that stuff when I get older? Do I want to have control and have the funds to pay for things that insurance isn't going to cover? And I don't want my current investments. I don't want my investments or my retirement money to cover that. That's what you have to determine with long-term care, because that's the want. I want to put basically a Band-Aid on my investments and say, I know that I cannot get enough long-term care to cover everything necessarily, but I want to have, I'm using an example, $250,000 to be there for my long-term care needs so that the rest of my investments can stay over there and continue to grow until I need to get to them, if I ever do. That's what long-term care insurance really is. And again, it's complicated. There's lots of different things. So I think that if you answer those questions for yourself, that will answer whether or not you should look into it. I would say most people probably should do a deep dive into all 3. If you make the educated decision you don't want them, that's on you. It's your choice. It's America. We can do what we want, right? But if you don't get the education, then you are simply making the choice that you're just not going to. And you're kind of letting the choice be given to you instead of making the educated choice. And people think, do I need to have all 3? Not necessarily. I don't necessarily think that a lot of my clients have all 3 of them. But some of them have 2 of them. That makes sense. And you can combine some of them, the disability, no, but the long-term care and life insurance, sometimes you can put them together in the same policy. And it's a long story, but we'll get to that. So I hope that that helped with some of the questions that are out there. I've got a lot more here that kind of came up through this search that I'm happy to go through. If there's anything else, feel free to send me a question. I'm happy to answer that as well. So until next time, stay strong, keep doing the good fight, and we will see you on the next video. Bye-bye.